Steel Seed is a stealth action adventure set in a dark sci-fi world on the brink of extinction. Play as Zoe and her drone Kobe as they explore a hostile underground facility. Uncover secrets, survive dangers, search for answers, and humanity's last hope. Welcome to episode 60 of the 5 T's of Stealth, where we will be discussing Steel Seed. Once again, the 5 T's include tasks, terrain, tools, threats, and tension. These are what I consider to be the fundamentals of stealth gaming. First things first, I played this game on hard. I don't really have a lot to say about the story. It's not necessarily bad, but it's definitely not good. Basically, the Earth was dying, so Dr. Archer created some AI to save humanity. These AI collected certain humans who would be able to rebuild humanity when the time was right. You play as Zoe, the daughter of Dr. Archer. Zoe awakens in a robot body and learns all about the setting and the protected humans by an AI named Savi who served her father. Savi explains how Dr. Archer uploaded his consciousness to the server or whatever, and that it was split into 4 pieces. Zoe then begins a quest to collect the 4 pieces of her father's consciousness in order to save humanity and awaken the protected humans. During this time, she is hunted by another AI, but for the life of me, I can't even remember his name. Zoe is also joined by a little drone named Kobe, who is with her throughout the game and is even used in the stealth and combat encounters. Once Zoe collects all 4 pieces of her father's consciousness and returns them to Savi, boom, surprise. Savi is the bad guy preventing the humans from waking up and blah blah blah. It's just fine and very forgettable, but I do like the setting, so that's a plus. I mean, there's more bits and pieces about how Zoe isn't actually a human, but rather was created in the likeness of her mother and father or some weird shit like that. She's literally an AI baby, which then leads into the game doing this whole thing about human identity and whatnot, which just gets old in a hurry. There's just so many moments where she's like, but I am a human, and it gets old. So again, I did not enjoy the story and mostly just ignored any of those elements throughout. In terms of actual mission design, as I mentioned, you will be tracking down the 4 pieces of Dr. Archer's consciousness. In order to do so, you will be taking down a lot of robots in stealth or the occasional forced combat encounter, accessing terminals to open doors, chase sequences dodging sniper shots and collapsing walkways, and completing some parkour or rock climbing. Seriously though, what is with games always wanting to do these rock climbing sections? It's not exactly enjoyable to slowly maneuver around the glowing edges even if there are other mechanics sprinkled in between. This especially bothers me when the literal ledge of a platform is within reach, but because it's not a special glowing ledge you can't grab onto it and instead have to go all the way around. This isn't just a Steel Seed problem, of course, but it is rather annoying how much time in this game is spent rock climbing. I don't mind it in actual stealth encounters when it enables new routes, but when it's how you explore, it gets old in a hurry. Oh, right. There's also a final boss fight against Savi, so I hope you don't hate the combat. In this game, there are 4 major sections: the assembly node, the excavation node, the power node, and the biological node. I am happy to say that each area does feel very unique in terms of visuals and actual mechanics at play. The assembly node basically sets the precedent for what to expect and introduces most of the basic mechanics. This includes mechanics such as glitch fields, which act as tall grass, zip lines, rock climbing, slopes you slide down, beams or poles to climb on, and more. Kobe, your drone, is also used a lot in the traversal as there are countless interactions between Kobe and the environment. Typically, this just involves shooting a button with Kobe, which will then move a platform, temporarily enable some form of rock climbing, change the location of a wall that you can wall run on, or more excitingly, launch an explosive barrel at an enemy in a stealth encounter. You will also come across healing stations and fast travel points as you progress. The excavation node adds in an oil lake and a little hoverboard or surfboard or whatever you want to call it for getting across the lake. The power node is not for strength but for electricity. This is the area that provides power to the entire facility. The main thing that I remember in this area was more fluctuation in the lighting. There were more areas that were just straight up dark. Finally, the biological node, which adds in a lot of foliage while reducing some of the technology. The biggest example here is the reduction of glitch fields. I won't say there were none, but it felt like there were absolutely less. These areas felt much more alive. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I remember every individual mechanic within each separate area, but again, I did find them all to feel fresh and distinct from one another. Throughout the game, there are some other mechanics at play, such as explosive barrels to shoot, some chandeliers to shoot down, or at least this game's version of chandeliers, which was like a box on a hook, jump pads, air currents, and probably some more. In terms of the stealth, it always feels like you have plenty of options available to you, which is always a huge plus in my book. I love being encouraged to explore opportunities in an area. Oh, I can follow the ledges to take an aerial approach, stay low moving between glitch fields, or maybe even start in the glitch fields then use an air current to find a vantage point. I never felt forced into a certain solution, especially during the stealth encounters that occurred on bigger maps, which allowed for so much variety. General movement feels good with access to a sprint, crouch, slide, double jump, dodge roll, dash, cover mechanics, wall running, climbing on ledges, and unlocked later on, the ability to glide. You can sneak up on enemies for a stealth takedown, perform a ledge takedown if they are above, or an aerial takedown if they are below. After eliminating an enemy, you need to loot the body for resources, which will also cause the corpse to disappear. I probably shouldn't say corpse for robots, but hey, what the hell, it flowed well. There is also the option to bait enemies, which almost feels like a ping when performed and will bring them over to your area. I loved doing this while hiding in a glitch field, which basically kept me completely invisible. In terms of combat, you simply have a light attack and a heavy attack and can jump in the air to perform a light attack. If you take any damage, you can heal, but it will cost some energy. Energy is the resource for all your abilities and is refilled by dealing damage. In the same vein as energy, you will need ammo to use your tools. The cool thing here is that all tools use the same ammo supply. However, each tool has a different ammo cost. I actually really liked this. Ammo can be purchased from the fast travel / save points as well as looted from bodies. The last thing to discuss before we jump into the skill tree is your trusty sidekick Kobe. You can switch to Kobe Vision, which allows you to pilot the drone to mark enemies, interact with the environment, use your tools, or simply get a feel for your area. I like having a little drone, but it feels like most, if not all of your best abilities are tied to Kobe, which is a bit of a bummer. Alright, let's jump into this skill tree. I first want to talk about how you unlock new skills, since I'm never a fan of this system. To unlock new abilities, you have to first complete a challenge, which then allows you to purchase the skill. Just pick one. If you want me to do challenges, then fine, great. But don't make me then decide which skill to purchase. One or the other, fam. One or the other. Also, some of the later challenges involve collecting Ember data, and I'm not going to waste my time finding collectibles for upgrades that I don't need, even if I want them. At that point, it's just busy work, and on principle, I'm frustrated and not doing it. With that out of the way, there are 3 sections of the skill tree: stealth, utility, and combat. I'm not going to read every single skill, but rather just talk about a few of the highlights. In general, however, you can unlock more tools ammo, a bigger energy bar, new combat moves like an aerial heavy attack, which is somehow not available by default, the ability to scan, and more. In terms of the stealth tree, the first thing I want to discuss is the glitch mine. This is pretty simple, but it's a mine that explodes when enemies come into contact with it. This has to be placed by Kobe, but I loved lining up a double or triple kill since the blast radius was very generous. The glitch mine also became one of my favorite tools for taking down brutes, but we'll come back to that in threats. There's an upgrade that makes the explosion silent, but I needed to collect 12 Ember data for that, so I never got it. I should also mention that when I say this tool has to be placed by Kobe, that does not mean you can only use the tool while in Kobe Vision. You absolutely can use these tools while in Kobe Vision, but you can also just shoot them from Kobe while playing as Zoe. The next skill, which was actually a huge time saver and just a nice little addition, Silent Absorber. This skill allowed for automatic looting on unaware enemies. In other words, if you complete a stealth takedown on an enemy, you'll immediately get the loot and the body will disappear, so you don't have to worry about cleanup. The last thing that I really care about is the Skull Piercer. This was a bullet you could charge up and fire from Kobe, dealing massive headshot damage. The upgraded version guarantees a one-shot kill on any unaware enemy hit in the head. But I needed 25 Ember data for that, so another pass. There's some other things available like turning invisible or placing glitch fields wherever you want them, but I never really used either. The one skill that I wish I had cared enough to complete the challenge for is Chained Kill. This ability allows Kobe to follow up a stealth kill by consuming 2 energy bars. I think this could have been a lot of fun to play around with for some crazy combo kills. Moving on to utility, there is definitely one skill that stands above all others, and that is hacking. This is pretty self-explanatory, but if you sneak up on a robot, you can turn them to your side. This costs energy, and the cost varies on robot type. Unlocking this skill basically led to my favorite moments of the entire game, so let me put you on some strategy later in threats. I'm really building up this threats section, huh? Aside from hacking, there really isn't anything too notable in utility. Here, you'll find several nodes for increasing your tools ammo, your energy, and Kobe's max ammo. There's also the noise diverter tool, which baits robots and came in clutch several times for some setups. In terms of the combat section, I really don't have anything special to shout out. You get some new abilities for hitting a bit harder, or you gain a follow-up attack after a perfect dodge. This section is just what you would expect. The only thing I guess I'll point out is the kinetic surge. This is a projectile from Kobe that deals damage based on how many enemies it hits. It can be very clutch in the forced combat encounters later in the game if you bunch them robots together. Lastly, you can find some chests around the map that contain an item. That will increase your max health if you find like 3 of them. Pretty standard stuff here. All the enemies in this game are robots. The first basic robots you come across simply have a sword or a rifle. They have a simple moveset in combat and can be easily taken down with a stealth takedown. The next robot, which I believe is considered a different type, but I'm not 100% sure, is more or less the same as the basic robots, but also has a shield. Again, not sure if it's actually considered a different type, or if it's the same with an additional weapon. In combat, you can break their shield to open them up for some damage. Alright, let's get more exciting. There are kamikaze robots, and I think the name more or less gives it away. If they spot you, they will come a-runnin'. Once close to you, they'll actually grab you, which prompts a little minigame where you press a sequence of buttons to push them off of you before they explode. If you aim this correctly, you can kick these kamikaze robots in the direction of other robots and get a multi-kill, which is very satisfying. I don't ever recall failing the minigame, but I imagine they'll just blow up right there and deal some massive damage to you. I also enjoyed hacking kamikazes, since they would just run into the other robots and explode. Next, let's talk about the brutes. Brutes are your pretty standard heavy enemy type. They have a ton of health and hit pretty hard. In fact, a stealth takedown will not kill a brute. It will only deal half damage. This brings me back to the glitch mine I mentioned in tools. My favorite strategy for brutes became sneak behind them for a stealth takedown, then as they are on the ground and slowly getting back up, quickly throw down a glitch mine to finish the job. A nice little 1-2 combo to take down the big fellas. I did hack a brute once or twice, but it didn't really feel worth it. In terms of combat, the brutes have some big flashy attacks. They'll jump from far away and land with a massive AoE attack. In close quarters, they've got some simple punches, but another big AoE available. For those who are unaware, AoE of course means area of effect, so this attack will be in a big circle. Moving on, there are stalker robots. These robots are very fast and agile with the ability to teleport. In stealth encounters, they can still be taken down with a simple takedown. However, their teleportation can make their pathing unpredictable, requiring a bit more caution in your actions. In combat, these guys can be seriously brutal as they teleport right in front of you, do a little combo, then teleport away again. This was especially difficult when there were multiple stalkers. I interpreted it as teleportation, but it could also just be some sort of invisibility, not 100% sure. Lastly, there are turrets in this game, but they look horrific in the best way. I actually really love this design, and in fact, these are probably my favorite turrets ever. That feels like a weird sentence to say since I guess you're not usually excited about turrets, but here I definitely am. Turrets do pretty much what you would expect. They scan an area, and if they lock onto you, they'll start spraying. These things hit hard as hell, and will pretty much kill you every time they see you. This is the enemy I was referring to earlier when discussing hacking. I absolutely loved hacking turrets because these guys are so damn strong. I could not believe just how strong, to tell you the truth. If you hack a turret, then they'll very easily kill everything in sight, including brutes. Nothing stands a chance against a turret's firepower. There were so many encounters that went from stressful to simple if I was just able to sneak behind a turret and make it mine. There were also many encounters where I wasted my time getting to a turret just for it to kill like one enemy after I hacked it. Detection as a whole is decent, but it's not anything special. You can definitely outmaneuver these enemies pretty easily and avoid that detection. If an enemy can see you, time will slow down so you know you're about to be spotted and need to break line of sight. Aside from these enemies, there are two other things to talk about: the Warrior Titan and Hogo, the robot that is hunting you down. I actually managed to remember his name. Both of these enemies are pretty worthless, honestly. They both pretty much just initiate chase sequences or simple run between cover encounters. Hogo has a sniper, but takes forever to lock on, so you can run pretty quickly through each of his sections. The Warrior Titan doesn't actually do anything. He's just big, so everything breaks when he's around, and you have to run from all the collapsing rubble. There is one time where he is stationary and looks back and forth over an area, so you have to time your movement so he doesn't spot you. If he does spot you, I believe it'll be a one-hit kill every time, but his detection seems pretty horrific in this section. I guess I need to also mention Savi, considering he is the final boss. There's really nothing crazy about this fight, so I'm not going to break it down. Savi has some big attacks and leaves himself open for some big damage. Dodge for a bit, then wail on him for a bit. At some point, Hogo will appear, and now that it is revealed he is good and Savi is bad, he will help you in this fight. You can choose when Hogo shoots his sniper, so it's pretty basic but helpful, I guess. So, all in all, pretty solid enemy design that will more or less keep you on your toes. Steel Seed can honestly be pretty damn difficult at times. If you are in one of the stealth encounters with all the enemy types located in one of the larger areas, then you really gotta be careful. Yes, there is combat in this game, but it's way too simplistic and brutal. Realistically, if you are detected, you probably are not going to survive the combat unless you're willing to take it very slow, which makes the battle feel excruciating and not in a good way. In other words, the stealth feels really good and genuinely tense, while the combat is pretty ass, which funnily enough incentivizes staying as stealthy as possible. So I think that more or less gives you the gist of my feelings on Steel Seed, but I'm going to dive into it a bit deeper. When this game is good, it's honestly pretty damn good. Truthfully, it's very impressive. This is very traditional third-person stealth, and while it might not really innovate on the genre, the encounters feel extremely refined. Personally, I love some good enemy variety, and this game nailed it. The stalkers ruined my plans so many times. I would be executing my game plan perfectly. Then all of a sudden, a stalker appears on a nearby ledge with a perfect view of a takedown or hack that I'm performing. Now all this planning is wasted and everyone is on alert because some damn stalker came out of nowhere. Brutes add an obstacle that isn't easily taken down and completely alters the flow. When you go after a brute, you will probably want to make sure it's the last thing standing so you aren't alerting everyone else. So again, this is some pretty great stealth. You might have picked up on where this is going, but that's the end of my praises. The stealth is great, but oh my lord, there is so much other bullshit that just muddies the experience. The combat, the story, the characters, the chase sequences, all the extra platforming. It's just more or less dull. There is all this extra stuff going on that just isn't enjoyable. I don't really want to go in depth and be super negative here, but platforming just slows the entire experience and is rarely ever enjoyable. The story is just kinda robots and AI typical slop, and all the dialogue from Zoe talking with Kobe is just ugh. I do want to talk about Kobe a bit more and my complaints. There's two main things I want to talk about with Kobe. The first I already touched on briefly, but all your cool gadgets and tools are tied to Kobe. So if Kobe goes down when you're scouting or something like that, then you just feel so naked. I just get in this state of mind of, well, I can't really do anything, so I'll just wait for Kobe to respawn. The second thing is not the end of the world, but it does bother me. Kobe is so goddamn immersion breaking. In dark areas, Kobe acts as a flashlight for you, and there were so many instances where I'm taking cover and hidden behind a wall while Kobe is just around the corner shining a light on a robot. This enemy robot and my drone are literally making eye contact, and that just gets to me. This is not something that's only a problem in dark areas, it's always a problem. If your first thought is, well, maybe the robots can't detect him, then you'd immediately be wrong. Because the robots will detect and attack Kobe when you are piloting him and flying around or just in combat encounters. The other example of this involves the glitch fields. Sometimes when you are in a glitch field and completely hidden, Kobe will just be floating above you or located just outside of the glitch field. This is another example of, wow, look over there, a random drone. I'm sure it's fine. Not the end of the world, but again, it kills my immersion. Later in the game, you will come across a few forced combat encounters. I think there were only two, but these are basically 2 or 3 waves of enemies coming at you that get harder and harder. I've got to say, those were probably the worst part of the entire game, and I almost want to tell you not to play on hard, just so that the combat is easier and you can just breeze through it. That's my genuine recommendation. When you get to a combat encounter, maybe lower the difficulty, breeze through it, and then turn it back up. I did have a couple technical issues I want to briefly touch on before we wrap this up. A lot of the time, enemies would get stuck on some random bump, slope, or other terrain, and just end up walking in place, basically guaranteeing your stealth is going to fail, especially if it was a brute. Aside from that, I had one instance where I tried to hack a stalker on the edge of a platform and somehow ended up falling into the floor and getting stuck inside the platform. This, of course, meant I had to restart the area and I was almost done, so that was frustrating. Steel Seed can be a very impressive game, but only during the well-refined stealth encounters that offer plenty of tools, even if they're all tied to the drone, plenty of different enemies, and plenty of tension. However, outside of that, the game feels extremely mind-numbing, and unfortunately, that's probably at least half of the experience. While the quantity of the negatives far outweigh the positives, I can't help but feel that the strong stealth makes the entire experience worth it.